and come at this whole subject from the shopper perspective. Obviously there's some really exciting stuff going on with ScreenMedia. There has been for a long time, lots of interesting work being done by the industry, but I'd suggest that sometimes the industry forgets to think about the shopper and what the shopper is after. And yet we're at a fairly pivotal point now where screens can start to make a real impact on retail and help retailers who have got their bricks and mortar stores to really invigorate what they're doing in those to help deal with the challenge that's coming from the online retail industry. So, first I want to take you back, if you can remember, the days when retailing was easy. When it was literally a store in a high street, all the retailer needed to worry about was the competition down the road. It was a lot easier for them to manage their prices, they had much stronger relationships with their shoppers, it was easier to give a fairly individual offer and to cope with what was going on then. And from the shopper's perspective, life was relatively simple. Okay, we didn't have the choices that we now have nowadays, but our purchase journey, if you like, it went from the home to the shop window, from the shop window into the store, to the fixtures and then to the till point. Relatively easy, relatively straightforward. From a marketing industry, it was easy to see what the touch points were, where the points in that journey were that you could actually interact with shoppers and make a difference. But how things have changed, and it's fairly recent change to be fair. I mean, these are just some of the symbols you'll be familiar with that reflect both the touch points, the platforms, the mediums, whatever we want to call them, the ways in which people can be influenced in how they shop, where they shop, when they shop, and what they shop. It's massive change going on and huge advantages for the shoppers, but it's making life very complicated for the retailers. In research that we did back in January amongst 1,000 online shoppers, we asked them which of these touch points they had used in the last month. So we were covering the Christmas period when shopping is at its peak. And the more traditional channels or touch points, if you like, you can see the figures there. So 87% went to a store, 49% went on the internet using a laptop or a PC, 23% actually used a catalogue. So those are the more traditional touch points and channels that we think of. But there's a lot of change coming through. And these are some of the figures for those newer touch points. And you could look at those and say, actually, isn't that quite disappointing? So if you look at smartphones, for example, 13% of people in the UK over Christmas said they used a smartphone during a purchase process. Doesn't feel particularly high, given I'm sure that a lot of us are actually using our smartphones on a regular basis. But I think this is really the start of the growth, that things are changing so quickly, so rapidly, that this is going to move very quickly. And ScreenMedia is just one part of this, but could be a very pivotal part of it in relation to the store environment. ScreenMedia has been part of the change for a long time now. We first started researching digital screens in store in 2004, which is when Tesco and Asda launched TV screens or screens into their fixtures. Both of them have now, or a while back, withdrew because it was that classic case, I'd argue, of we've got the technology, let's put it in store, this will work. Shoppers came into store, saw these TVs in store, they're buying their wine and they're being told the news or the weather. They didn't get it. They didn't see the relevance of the screens at that point. But a lot has changed since then. We're now talking 8 years on from then. Screens are much more visible out and about when we're outside of our homes. It's not just about a TV anymore. ScreenMedia's been making considerable progress, particularly in the out of home, outside of the store. So I know you earlier, some of you might have heard the talk from the guy with the taxi cab media on top of the cabs. Well, obviously the screens in cabs have been quite an innovation. On the tube stations, they're regularly seen now, seeing them at bus stops. There's a lot of innovation going on. But what's interesting from the shopper perspective is that actually the use of tablets, and I should have put on their smartphones as well, is bringing people into the space, shoppers into the space where these sorts of screens, the interactive in particular, make absolute sense. they're starting to feel very normal in the way that a TV ad used to feel normal, but when you stuck it in store it didn't. Something about the interactivity of tablets and smartphones is actually helping shoppers then think how they could be using that kind of media in the store. They're already doing it themselves. They're pulling out their phones when they're in store and checking pricing as they're looking at a product in the store. They're using QR codes, very low level at the moment, but they are using QR codes. So they're already now starting to relate a screen to a store environment, whereas in 2004 they just didn't get it. They didn't see the relevance, they didn't see the role. Now media outside of the screens that you guys are working with is driving that sort of understanding and usability in a way that creates a much more positive context for those of you that are wanting to then work with or already working with retailers and how they can use screens in store themselves. And it's worth noting that the high street isn't a relic yet. There's been a lot of talk recently. We've had some quite big news in terms of retailers that have gone down in the last few months. It's really hard for them out there. There's been a lot of talk about, well, you know, the high street's dead. No one goes high street shopping now. They go to malls or they go to big retail parks or they sit at home or they use their tablet on the train. No one goes to the high street. It'll be dead. It'll be houses soon enough. Well, actually, shoppers would beg to differ with that. If you talk to shoppers, they see a very clear role for bricks and mortar. It's a place where they enjoy the whole process of shopping. They like touching and feeling the products that they're buying. Of course, there are lots of things they feel comfortable buying online, but sometimes you just cannot beat the experience of going into the store, trying on the clothes or the shoes, or playing with the product that the TV you're planning on buying, for example. So high street is not dead, but it needs a boost of enthusiasm, injection, reinvigoration. And I think that this sort of combination of people's understanding and usability of screens and the requirement for much more engaging stores, physical stores, bring those two things together. And I think we're seeing it now reaching a point where screen media in store is really about to take off. 45% of the UK population say, regardless of what new technologies are available, I'm still going to want to go shopping. So that really confirms that bricks and mortar do absolutely have a place in our shopping environment, but they could be doing a lot better. They could be really challenging back against online if they made the stores much more engaging, created much greater ambience. And these are all the things that actually screen media should be able to deliver. And in the same survey that we were doing, 50% of shoppers agreed that they love the new technology being used by the retail industry. The screens that are being used in the windows to draw your attention, and then more screens inside to draw you in and get you in there and looking at all sorts of new products. Much better than a very static fixture that we're all so used to. Looking specifically at interactive screens, we asked a number of questions about that, or asked a number of statements. And what we found, 20% of shoppers agreed that an interactive screen in store, so quite a specific feature, I guess, but an interactive screen can help them save time. 40% said it does make the shopping easier. And easy shopping is something that retailers and brands that supply to them are always on the lookout for. So the opportunity for a screen in store, an interactive screen in store, to actually bring that ease of shopping, particularly on more technical products, whether it's a pushchair, for example, here, or whether it's some of the electronics that are available, starting to bring things to life and talking to shoppers in store in a way that they're being talked to in a lot of other places and spaces now, through tablet, through smartphone, etc. 24% agreed it gives easy access to information. I mean, in some respects you could look at these figures and think they're a little bit low, aren't they? But this is a massive step change from where shoppers were when Tesco and Asda first attempted to bring screens into the grocery environment. This starts to demonstrate that what you're delivering into store is beginning to deliver against shopper needs as well. And that's when things really work and things can be taken forward. The one lookout is that there are people out there who don't really associate screens with shopping, but they will do. if the right content is there, if the screens are used in the right way to actually help them with their shopping, rather than just thinking, okay, we've got this great new gadget, let's just stick it in store and they'll use it. It's thinking through, what do shoppers need in store? What's going to help them make their purchasing? What's going to make sure they buy the pushchair from this store and not go somewhere else, even if the one they want isn't actually on display? So using screens to bring all of that together. And a way, perhaps a structure for thinking, if you're dealing with retailers, if you're an agency that's looking at using screens in store, to come at it from the shopper angle, think about 4 key steps that shoppers go through. They're not linear anymore. People tend to go round and round in circles before they make a purchase, but they are interrelated. And the start point is this sense of window shopping. What's out there? What do I fancy? Let's go and have a look and see what's available. The next step is making the choice. What is there? What works for me? What's got the sorts of features that are going to give me what I need out of the product that I'm buying? What sort of range is available? Is there any extra information that can help me make my purchase? Then at the actual point of buying, the point at which they're saying, okay, yep, this is the one, that's when they need to know the price and the offers, where that sort of information can really add value. And then after sales, potentially the service and trust as well. But if you think about shopping in those sorts of ways, and if you think about how shoppers interact with the retail environment on the basis of that series of steps, then I think you'd be better placed to deliver the right screens, whether it should be interactive or whether it should just be broadcasting a particular type of message, putting the right screens in the right place with the right information to actually support shoppers. And just some examples of how you can bring things to life. So here, Forever 21, a massive screen above one of their outlets where they're actually videoing, playing back the scene in front of their store. And you can't quite make it out on the photo, but there's a ticker tape of questions and sort of fashion advice that if people notice, they can start watching, and then it's kind of drawing them in. An opportunity to use screen media to inspire and engage shoppers, to get them into the store in the first place. But equally, there's engagement. The whole augmented reality is just emerging for shoppers. I tried out John Lewis's Magic Mirror, so one of these mirrors where you can actually try products on as you stand in front of it. I've got an image in a minute, and it was absolutely fascinating and really engaging. And one of the tips that one of the girls mentioned that one of its big features actually is helping people that don't like going into changing rooms. People that don't enjoy that process or maybe can't go into changing rooms for some reason, then the whole augmented reality is going to be a massive step forward for the retail environment as well as whatever's happening beyond that. Also consideration, that point at which they're making the purchase, deciding which one, then what might be considered a more classic or old style use of screens, but it's absolutely perfect if it's in the right place. And again, that's something to be thinking about. If you come from the shopper perspective, you'll have a much better idea of where that screen should be. And there's a question mark as to whether the till point, which even here is where it is, whether that's the right place or is that too late in the purchase process. So where else in the store might you be able to share these sorts of messages and make the most of the screens that you're putting in? And here I was talking about a magic mirror. This isn't John Lewis's, but it's an example. And it's it helps with ease of shop. It means that you can quickly scan through a whole load of cardigans, for example, and try them on without actually trying them on. And it makes life a lot easier for a shopper, but it also engages them as well. And that's the key word for the bricks and mortar environment at the moment, is how they can engage shoppers to make sure they come to store, that they don't stay at home and do it all online or do it online on the train, on their tablet. What can they offer within their environment and their space that's going to engage shoppers? And I think, as I said, screens are going to play a really big role in this. There's definitely a sense that the stores are starting to fight back, and how screens can help them do that, how screens can add to what they're doing, both in terms of engaging or ease of shop or delivering information in much more accessible ways than has been done in the past. And the other thing that screens can do that a lot of standard POS can't is tailor that information to the shopper. There's been a lot of talk in retail about multi-channel and how multi-channel needs to be seamless. That when a shopper goes into a store, that their history of what they've done online will go in that store with them. I'd actually say it's not about seamless, it's about tailoring. It's about recognising that shopper, interacting with them in a way that helps the store understand exactly what that shopper needs and wants, and delivering the information to them there and then, which could be delivered much more quickly through screens and interactive screens than it could be even through a shop assistant, and certainly through catalogues and what have you. So if there's a to-do list for you in terms of thinking about this from the shopper perspective, then firstly and primarily, please think about the shopper needs. You probably have got some fantastic kit, but just putting it in store won't necessarily mean that it works. Tesco and Asda learnt that a while back, and that is still the case now. What is it that your screen or screens are going to deliver to the shopper? At what point in the purchase process are they going to help that shopper move forward, right to the point to making the actual decision? So what solutions are they delivering to the shopper? Not just the retailer and not just the brand, but to the shopper as well. Is it inspiration? Is it information? Is it advice? What is it that that screen is going to do? And identifying the activities within the purchase journey that you want to target, so that you're creating roles for the screens from the shopper perspective. And I think if you take those three to-dos, then I think you'll be a better place to make sure that the screens you put in store absolutely fit with what shoppers need and want, and become pivotal to the way they're shopping, and start helping bricks and mortar revitalise themselves. I've whizzed through that because I'm conscious we're sort of backed up time-wise, but I hope that was clear and made sense. And if anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to take those.